and welcome to Get Creative at Home. I'm Corey. This month we are making a shadow box craft. So if you've never seen a shadow box before, shadow boxes are usually they're like an enclosed like display case that usually has like an object or some objects. It's deep, so it creates sort of a nice three-dimensional effect. It's can be used for like storing objects or like I've seen like shadow boxes that have like collector baseballs or cards in them, but also you can use them to like create art. A very popular thing is like creating a 3D layered art piece, which is pretty much what we're going to be doing today. So we are going to be mixing some watercolor in this activity as well. So that should be fun. If you signed up for the kit, you'll get all the materials. There is the wooden box that we're using for our shadow box. You should have 4 pieces of watercolor paper, a watercolor paint set, paintbrush, some colored pencils, and some foam strips that we're going to use to raise each layer of our image to create depth. So there's also a image that is not quite what we're going to be replicating, but it's basically the same sort of theme that we're going to be doing. It's basically a image of a fox on a sort of mountainous peak overlooking some trees and some mountains in the distance. And we're going to be recreating that with our watercolor paper. So, like I said, there's 4 pieces of paper, and they're each going to represent a different layer of our image. One of them is going to be the sky in the background. Now, it's up to you how you color this. So when we did this in person, the different members that participated, they all did like different times of day. One of them did sort of a purplish sunset. Another one did like a dark bluish night sky. In mine, I did kind of like a gradient sunset effect. So it's up to you what color you make the backdrop for the sky. In the reference image, they didn't really have a background behind the mountains. They left that bare. So that's also an option if you want to leave your backdrop bare and leave the wood exposed. You can do that too. On the second piece of watercolor paper is going to be the mountains. Then on the third, it's going to be the trees. In the image, they look kind of like a mixture of like evergreen trees. So that's kind of what I was going for. I'm not a tree expert, so they might be a different type of tree, but they look to me like evergreen trees. So that's kind of what I did when I was making my example. And then on the frontmost piece, it's going to be the fox. Now again, it's up to you how you do this. In the sort of reference image that we have, the fox is sort of smaller and further away. In the example that I'm making, the fox is closer to you, so it's a little bigger because I wanted to draw a bigger fox. One of the participants in the in-person one, they drew their fox sitting. Another one sort of replicated the further away fox. So it's up to you how you go about doing it. But yeah, let's get into it. So as you can see, I've started with each piece. I started with the background first. Basically, I did like kind of a gradient. I was kind of going for like a sunset vibe, like I said. So with a dark blue on top, going into purple, going into pink, going into yellow, and then going back into blue again. So the background isn't going to be super visible, so really only the top fourth of it is going to be visible over the mountains. So you can paint like the whole thing, but like it's only the top part of it's going to be really visible. Then with the mountains, when I got to that, basically I just used black and painted the top of the mountains super dark, and then I went in with more water to water it down for the rest of it, so that it was like the tips of the mountain were like very distinct, but then it sort of faded into the background. With the trees, I used the different shades of green and some yellow to paint the trees. I was using yellow kind of to like give like some highlights on the trees, on the ones that are closest to you. And then eventually, when it dries, you can go back in with the color pencils. Now this is optional if you want to do that. I've seen a lot of people use color pencils as sort of like a additional piece to help make the watercolor stand out, often doing like little hatching or shading effects. So that's kind of what I did with my image. Once the trees were painted and dried, I kind of went back in with the green and black pencil and sort of did some hatching on the trees to give them some kind of depth. But then lastly, there's the fox. So like I said, with mine, I made the fox kind of big because I wanted him to be like more prominent. But it's up to you what size you make him. Sort of just went in with orange paint, and did his back coat, added a little bit of brown to the back of it to, and sort of blended that in. And then I used black for his feet, tail, ears, and snout. Once he dried, then I went back in with the red and black color pencils, and did some hatching to like give him kind of more of a furry appearance on his fur, and did some cross hatching on his tail to make it look a little bit more fluffy. So once all your pieces are colored and they have dried, then the next step is to cut them out. So I would wait for them to completely dry before you cut them out. I had tried doing one while it was still wet, and the paper, it didn't cut as well, so definitely wait for it to fully dry before you start cutting. But yeah, so then I just cut out the negative space around the mountain and the tree and the fox. For some of the negative space, so if you don't know negative space, it's the empty space surrounding the subject of your image. For example, it's basically all the space that I left white. But yeah, so I cut most of that out. There's a couple like spaces that were sort of hard to cut out, so instead of cutting them out, I went in with some paint and sort of filled them in. So for example, underneath the fox's legs, there were some white spaces that I filled in with green so that it would kind of match the trees. And then with the trees, one of the branches created like kind of a pocket of space. So like I filled that in with black so that it kind of matched the mountain behind it. So after everything is cut out, now comes the assembling part. So I included a glue stick and the foam strips. This should work to assemble everything together. If you have any issues with the glue stick, maybe try some liquid glue if you have that on hand. But the glue stick should hold the foam pieces together. Basically, you're just going to glue your sky straight onto the box, just flat onto it, and then you're going to start taking some of the strips and lining them on the back of your other pieces. So to get that 3D effect, you're going to need at least you're going to need to stack them at least a couple pieces high. So for example, with the mountain, I used 4 pieces and stacked them 2 pieces high, so that it was raised off of the sky. And I tried to go 1 layer higher with each of the subsequent pieces. So with the trees, I had 3 layers of foam, and then with the fox, I had 4 layers. Um, when it was getting to the 4 layers, it was getting a little hard for the pieces to stick. I would advise, if you do have time, try applying each piece and then giving it some time to dry. But I was kind of going through it pretty quick, stacking all the pieces up. But it worked out in the end. So then once you have your foam strips attached to the back of each of your images, then you can go and start inserting them into the shadow box. Once everything is within the shadow box, then you're done. So I hope you enjoyed this craft. I hope it came out well for you. If I haven't already shown them, I'm going to show some of the examples that the other participants did for the in-person one. I think they all came out pretty cool. So I hope yours comes out good as well. If you feel interested in sharing it, you can either send it to our social media page or email it to me, because I always like to see how everybody's art turns out. But that is this month's Get Creative. If you are interested, you can go to our website at suffolkpubliclibrary.com to see upcoming programs and events. Get Creative is a monthly program. We do it once a month in person and then once a month virtually. So definitely check that out if you want to come in person, or if you want to get the kit again, or if you want to see some of the older videos. We have a playlist on our Facebook and YouTube page of the previous months. Definitely check them out if you haven't seen them. There's a lot of cool different crafts that we've done. Next month we are going to be doing a mixed media piece, so that should be fun. We'll be mixing different elements into that, so I am excited for that. But yeah, I will see you guys next time. Have a good one.